and welcome to Sunday Morning Cornerman. The Sunday Morning Cornerman is part of the Cageside Press Podcast Network. On this episode of the SMC, we'll discuss UFC on ESPN Plus 11, Gustaffson versus Smith. I will do all this with my co-host, who can be read on Sherdog, fan-sided in Cageside Press, and heard on the Loudmouth MMA Network, the great Keith Shillan. Keith, how are you?
Great, brother. I'm ready to talk about this spectacular card.
All right, well, let's get into it. Anthony Smith and Alexander Gustaffson are on the short list of men who have gone the distance with Jon Jones. The GOAT's last two opponents met on Saturday night, looking to see who gets to stay at the top of the division and who may start keeping Jones's gate. The fight seemed like both fighters were doing what they wanted to do, Lionheart stalking and the Mauler looking for openings in the counter game. After feeling out first round, Gustaffson seemed to be the more active fighter. However, a post-fight disclosure of a broken hand by Smith may have led to that. In the end, an ill-timed throw attempt by Gustaffson led to him losing his back, and ultimately the fight as BJJ Black Belt Smith found a choke. Let's save the Gustaffson post-fight announcement for a second and talk Smith. He's lost to two men at 205 pounds, and they are both fighting for the belt in July. It seems like this fight set him up for the winner of that fight, but he was knocked out by one and dominated by the other. Did this performance convince you more than his performances against Jones and Santos that Smith should get the winner of that fight?
Well, I didn't think he was going to get the winner no matter what. I even after a really good performance, obviously the best performance of his career, the biggest name he's defeated in his career. Oh, I shouldn't say the biggest name because he has beaten aging veterans and Rashad Evans and who am I forgetting? Shogun. So not the biggest name, but at the time the most relevant, the biggest win of his career. I don't think he's the next line. I think it'd probably be Corey Anderson. It might even be one of these hot prospects like Dominic Reyes or Johnny Walker, just because we've already seen those matchups twice. What I think this did, though, is, to me, it established Anthony Smith. It's kind of like this proved that he was good. Because before that, it was kind of like if Anthony Smith's title run kind of felt like right place, right time. I mean, you get a good name of Rashad Evans that was basically on the way out. Shogun.
Easy.
I mean, come on. The guy's been competing forever, beat up. He beats those two guys. He gets a decent win over Volkan Ozdemir, but then it became more questions about Volkan Ozdemir saying, like, hey, kind of same thing. Was he right place, right time when he had a title run against Daniel Cormier? So now by beating Gustaffson, that's it. He has proven he really is a good fighter. Not even a good fighter, but one of the top fighters in the division. So good for him, man. I think that's a really good moment for a guy who was viewed as a journeyman for so long. I think it's a really good moment for him.
We'll get to Gustaffson in a sec. I have a question that just kind of popped in my head after something you were saying. Do you think the UFC matching Jones up with Santos and Smith, did they do that to sort of open the door to, like, hey, everybody that steps in there with Jones isn't going to be some guy who's got this fantastic resume? It could be Dominic Reyes. It could be Johnny. Do those two fights open the door for matching Jones up with guys with less impressive resumes or guys that are on maybe shorter runs? Or is it just those were the two guys that were ready to fight him at the time?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, you talk about any guys who had long runs. You go through the guys like George St. Pierre. I mean, he's had some wins over guys. Like when Dan Hardy challenged for the title, I don't think anybody really considered Dan Hardy a true title contender. I mean, Anderson Silva. I mean, he defended against Travis Lutter. I mean, even when he fought like Talis Lates, no one really saw these guys as a threat. Patrick Cote, remember when he got a title fight?
Well, let me just step in.
So I kind of feel the same way with this. Like Anthony Smith was just, hey, you can't keep having Jones fight Daniel Cormier.
Okay.
Right, no, but I guess my question is that for so long, because Jones came along at the end of a great light heavyweight division, he was always fighting Hall of Famers, it seemed like. Fighting and Hua. And is this kind of the UFC's way of saying, listen, man, we can't be running those guys. Those guys, the old thing that Rick Pitino said about the Celtics, Larry Bird's not walking through that door.
Sure.
Is that kind of the UFC saying, hey, man, Shogun Hua's not walking through that door?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, 100%. But I also think because of Jon Jones' run as champion, one, for doing it for so long, it's going to happen. But also the fact that we couldn't establish the other ones because Jon Jones has been the guy, where the other guys, Chuck Liddell, Rampage, Lyoto Machida, they get beating each other, knocking each other off. So they kind of all had that shot. For example, if Gustafson beat Jon Jones or beat Daniel Cormier, a win over Gustafson in a rematch would seem so much bigger than it is now. Now that, or if Jon Jones won the division, Anthony Smith could actually be the champion right now, and it would change how you view Anthony Smith as a fighter. And you know. I mean, you take a resume of like Anthony Smith and you compare it against a guy like Rich Franklin, there's not much difference in quality of win, except for Rich Franklin won the title. He beat Evan Tanner, which is not that great of a win, but Evan Tanner happened to be the champion at the time. So I kind of feel like with John Jones just being the king of the throne and no one be able to beat him, and in my opinion, the greatest fighter of all time, that's why some of these other ones. And I feel like that's what happened to Demetrius Johnson so long. People they shit on the division, the flyweights, and saying there was no talent. No, it's just Demetrius Johnson was so good that you don't look at Joseph Benavidez as some unbelievable talent, or John Dotson, even Henry Cejudo before he beat him. Stuff, guys like that, you know.
Right, yeah, and especially like you said, Rumble Johnson might have been the champ at Gustaffson.
Rumble Johnson, yes, that's a perfect example. Rumble Johnson. I mean, Shogun could have had a longer run. Maybe Lyoto Machida would have got the title a second time. You know, there's a whole bunch of guys.
Right. Right after the fight, during the post-fight interview, Alexander Gustafsson told us the show's over, guys, and he left his gloves in the cage. So often in this sport, your retirement lasts until an interesting matchup and a big payday comes along. However, I'm inclined to think this might be for real. I base my thoughts on retirements with how comfortable a fighter has been with having long stretches away from the game during their career. Also based on him being a pioneer of Swedish MMA, I think I might put Gus in the Hall of Fame. So what are your thoughts on him maybe being a Hall of Famer, on if his retirement's going to last? Put a bow on Alexander Gustafsson's career for me.
Well, is he a Hall of Famer? Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer just because we've talked about this before. If you have a decent career in the UFC, you get in the Hall of Fame, so he's in. And obviously, I agree with everything you said. Being the Swedish, the leader of Swedish MMA, having one of the most classic fights in history, his first fight with John Jones, almost winning the title against Daniel Cormier. So he's had, good moments. So yes, Hall of Fame. Will he retire? I think this will at least be at a long extended break. Refresh your mind. I mean, he just fought for the title, ended up losing. He lost for fighting for the title 3 times. He lost in his home city, main eventing a UFC. I think that's twice now he lost in his home city. So, his biggest moments of his career, he's kind of fallen short. So I feel like maybe he needs to refresh his mind, get away. Will it be permanent? I put it at 50-50, which is higher than I put most fighters when they say they're retiring. And, I mean, you think about, Uriah Faber. He's the big news coming back. When Uriah Faber announced his retirement, it felt like it was big. He had that moment. He came out to California. The whole crowd was cheering. He won. It just seemed like the time he was leaving, and then he's coming back. I mean, and you could do it. Tito Ortiz. You could do it. BJ Penn. You could do it. I mean, the list goes on and on. So, do I expect him to stay out? No, he's still pretty young. He's still probably a top 5 guy. I mean, he had moments in this fight. It wasn't like he was blown out of the water. He had good moments in this fight. So, yeah, I think he'll be back.
You'll see, I'm going to hand this one to you if you guys are listening. If you're not, you should be. You do not yet have a fight picked for this year's Hall of Fame. Make it Jones-Gustafsson. It'd be a nice moment. Jones fights over the weekend. If you can get Jones to the Hall of Fame, great for you. But since we're not 100% sure that Gustafsson would go in, you and I both think he would, but he's not a slam dunk. That's a way to get him in. It's a way to get them both on the stage. I think that might be a good moment. Yeah,
the only thing I think you just touched on why it might not be picked. It makes a lot of sense, but because Jones is fighting that weekend, headlining it, he has a lot of things already. I think might be one thing too many for one guy. But yeah, I'm okay. I mean, obviously, it's one of the greatest fights of all time. So yeah. I mean, it's eventually gonna get in. So right. Sure.
All right, let's move on, Keith. Alexander Rakic. I'll make this intro quick because I have a rule that an intro should never be longer than the fight. So let's talk Rakic. Why am I butchering this kid's name? Who was previously untested, but aced the first big test he had. What did you see in this kid, and what does he have for this division?
Well, I mean, this is the guy that, I mean, there's not much really you can take. I mean, he threw a high kick and knocked Jimmy Manuwa out. I mean, it's hard to really dissect. What was it, 20-second fight? It's hard to really dissect. But I think he's 3-4-0 now in the UFC. I mean, he's whatever it is. He's beating the brakes off some. I mean, Justin. Remember when he fought Justin Leggett, and Justin Leggett was coming down from heavyweight. Leggett was undefeated at the time. On size heavyweight, coming down to light heavyweight, kind of had a little buzz in him. And then Rakic beat the brakes off of Justin Leggett. And then he had a little hiccup with Devin Clark, but even that wasn't that bad. I mean, he got hurt in the beginning of the fight, and then he ended up taking out Devin Clark, and now he gets the biggest matchup of his career. Co-main event, he passed it with flying colors. And it's a weird thing where we talked about. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about light heavyweight as kind of like a stagnant division, and There wasn't all. Now suddenly there's like all this new blood, and Rakic's just right in there with Johnny Walker and your Dominic Reyes and all the other guys. It's just escaping my mind, but there's like some new fresh blood. And to me, if this is UFC, it couldn't be a better moment. You have a name in Jimmy Manuwa on his way out. You have a prospect. He blows him out the winner. One of the most devastating knockouts in history. How it was. I mean, Jimmy Manuwa looked like he died. To me, what a great moment for the UFC right there.
I agree. I really like the way the light heavyweight division's going. They got some, like you said, they got some new guys coming in. They're all, I think, less than 30 years old or right at it, and that's kind of what you need. I mean, most guys hit their athletic prime at 30 or sort of a little bit after, especially in MMA. So I like where this division's going, and hopefully John Jones figures out an exit strategy to let these boys kind of have their division, and then maybe he goes up to heavyweight. Maybe he does. I just think that even though Jones is young, I don't know that I would want him running through these guys. I want him to do something, kind of like what Anderson Silva did, where he kind of took a little bit of a detour to 205 and let the division catch up to him. And the next thing you know, here comes Chris Weidman. Maybe he goes to heavyweight just to let these boys figure it out for a while, and then he comes back towards the end of his career. I would like to see that.
Or even if you have him at heavyweight, feed him like a Corey Anderson, a guy who's established, someone that not really a threat, but someone who's established. Instead of this one of these younger up and coming guys.
And listen, let's not discount the fact that John Jones figures out ways to lose time in the cage anyway on his own. He doesn't need it.
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
He might find that banana peel one more time and then again. That's another
that's true.
All right, Keith, Makwan Amirkhani just seems to have something. He's one of those guys you like to watch fight, and he seems to have star written all over him. However, the 30-year-old fighter doesn't always seem as excited about his career as I am. He has fought once a year for the last 4 years. He's 3-1 over that time, but fighting as often as the Super Bowl is played doesn't really classify you as an active fighter. He was, however, active on this night, taking the fight to a game. Chris Fishgold, he found the anaconda in the second and choked Fishgold out. Keith, do you think this performance will light a fire under Amirkhani, or is it sort of see you next year for Mr. Finland?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope it's not see you next year, because you have these weird moments with the guys. He said that he wasn't injured. He did this to kind of work on his boxing. That was talking about. He took a year off. He needed a fresh mind. Really wanted to work on his striking, and then he didn't really strike. His moments were all from wrestling. That's what he's done. It's funny. I remember him coming down to the cage, and they were talking, and I'm like, wow, man, what are they supposed to get to this guy? And then he actually, the whole first round, he kind of seemed like he was stepping back, waiting, trying not to get hit, waiting for his takedown. He did that. And then he was getting, I don't know if you remember the second round, he was getting picked apart by Fishgold. And then he shot in on a takedown. Fishgold, I don't know why he did. He jumped the gate. You take a chance like that, you better finish that submission. He didn't. And then there was a scramble, and then Amirkhani locked in that beautiful anaconda choke, which made it really exciting. But this guy's now 4-1, I think, in the UFC, which it's a really quiet 4-1. But that's what happens when he has a like you said, taking year breaks at a time. It's hard to get excited about a guy like that. Yeah,
4-1, and the loss was to Arnold Allen, and it was a split. So, I mean, this guy's really, like you said, let me ask you a question, and I've always wondered this. Do you think that European fighters hide in Europe sometimes, and they'll take these long stretches because most of the media is in America, and there's not guys showing up at, the Lab or American Top Team going, hey, man, when are you going to get back in the cage? And they're sort of over there, and it seems like, this is just my interpretation, one, there's not enough as much media in Europe, and two, they seem to be a little bit more favorable.
I definitely think the media is definitely more favorable, because media in their region always seems to be more excited about the person. I mean, when I was with the Takeover, we had a lot of friends, a lot of European media members, and they're all about when an English guy comes in or a UK, guy from the UK, Ireland, that area. They kind of seem to know more about him. They're more excited about him than we are as Americans. So I understand how the media view it. I don't know if it's a matter of hiding or just kind of it happens because of, it's expensive to move your family to America. It's expensive to fly across the world to train, So I think that might be a factor of it. But it's also Europe and America is different. I mean,
yeah,
times are different, cultures are different. So I think some of that is to go with it. One thing I did want to mention, do you remember how Khabib, when he came on the scene, he was missing long times, and there was like no buzz about him because of that. I feel like Amirkhani is the same way. Now, before anybody says anything, I'm not comparing him on a talent sense to him. I'm just talking strictly from how a guy who's in one of the best divisions, probably the best division in MMA, and he's got a nice, impressive record. There's not really a lot of buzz about him because of the big stretches, just like when Khabib was beating Gleason Tebow and Kamal Shalarus. Like, there was no buzz on him because he'd have big, long stretches of inactivity.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see. I mean, I like having Amirkhani in the UFC. Again, we only get him once a year, but I wonder if he was on like a European promotion, if he would be a bigger deal, and if he'd be the star over there, and they'd be like, man, imagine if this guy.
Yeah.
Kind of like Akiyama or something like that, when people that before they got here, it was like,
sure.
Akiyama fought UFC 100 like he was going to be the next big deal, and then he kind of came in. He was good, but I mean, he fought Alan Belcher. It wasn't,
Well, look how the guys like Cage Warriors, like Jack Shaw. He's coming in as like this like savior of English MMA. Who's the guy that recently lost? He lost to Dad Narimani. He lost to the Viking guy. He used to he on Ariel Hawani's show all the time. Real buzz, and he's not even that good of a talent, but he became Paddy Pimblett was just kind of big star in Europe. He's still a young fighter, but he got a lot more press than if he came in from LFA, got brought into the scene. There definitely is an aspect about coming in the right promotion in Europe to kind of build up your name. There's definitely that. But another reason why I think you see these guys only in Europe is just the convenience. I mean, when you bring the way Mr. Finland will get treated in Europe compared to America, it's like a big deal. They're excited. I mean, you heard he got a big buzz there in Sweden. I don't think he would have got the same reception if he fight next week in Chicago. He wouldn't have got the same reception.
That's true, and I think also with some of the favorable media stuff, I think they view it in Europe like a lifting tide raises all boats, and we don't really look at the success of Chris Weidman doesn't necessarily equate to the success of a New York-based MMA media
That's
guy.
right.
But those guys got attached to Conor, and Conor's different than Weidman, obviously. But I think that's why they're a little bit more favorable over there. All right, let's move on. Heath, let's talk Giagos and Hadzovic. First couple of great nicknames, the Spartan and the Bosnian Bomber. Although, in fairness, the second one might be a little hard. Might be going a little hard for 2019, the Bosnian Bomber.
Yeah, no, it's not that anymore. They don't use it anymore. It's something. It's actually really like cheesy name. I can't remember what it is now, but it's not the.
They got rid of it?
Yeah, he doesn't use it. I can't remember what it is. They don't use it anymore because remember when Marcus Davis could be called the Irish hand grenade when he went to Northern Ireland?
That's right.
Like it's one of those. Hey, let's not use that anymore.
So this fight was Giagos is from the throughout, but I want to use this fight as a jumping off point to a discussion about MMA wrestling that we've had before and how it should be scored. Giagos was much more effective taking Hadzovic down than keeping him down. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I've asked this question before. I didn't prep you for it, but here it comes. How should a takedown be scored, and how long should you have to keep the fighter down?
Well, I don't know if there's a set. I think it's how much. That's such a. I don't know, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 12 seconds. I don't know if there's a set time. I don't know if there's a set time, but if a guy takes someone down and he pops right back to his feet, it should be viewed as like landing a jab. I mean, this should definitely still be viewed as, hey, you control the guy. You took a guy from his feet down to his back where he didn't want to go, so you definitely control the moment. So it should be used effectively. If me and you got in a fight in a classroom at school and you took me down and put me on my back, and instantly everyone pulled us apart, right? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when we walk through the hallways? You're going to say, "Yo, John keeps Shillan's ass. He keeps his ass." Right? Oh, no, he took me down for 1 second.
Right.
That's all you have. So I definitely think there should be some value to it. But, yeah, I don't know if this is the perfect example of going to, hey, did a guy wrestle his way decision? Because I thought Hadzovic got beat pretty easily. And I thought it was a terrible show. I did terrible at my picks. We'll get to that later. Right. But Hadzovic had this really nice performance against Nick Hine, and he was kind of it was another fight against Polo Reyes where he's kind of seemed like this guy like, ooh, this is a decent prospect, and then he just started sucking. So I don't know if this is a good example.
So maybe the answer is, when we talk about what control time is, I think once a takedown transitions into jiu-jitsu and now you're grappling, right? Now you're on the ground grappling. Maybe that's when you should there should be different types of classifications for a takedown. You know what I'm saying? Once you know that you're now on the ground and you're playing the ground game, I think it's a little bit different than just I took you down and then you found a way. Once you stop trying to get to your feet, that's a bad way to put it, but we'll hash this out.
When you're really controlled. When you're controlled.
Right. So anyway, let's get back to these two fighters. Was this a bad Hadzovic performance, or do you think there's something here in Giagos?
I mean, it's a tough division. I don't think either guys will ever be contender. Giaga, so to me, he had a much better performance than I expected. I actually thought I thought it was one of the easier fights to pick. And I thought the only way Giagos would win would be out wrestling. I didn't realize that Hadzovic was this bad. I mean, his wrestling was terrible. But I actually thought Giagos would win the battles on the feet too. I thought he won almost the entire fight.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was a really good performance, but I will say it was definitely a bad performance for Damir Hadzovic.
All right, let's move on, Keith. David Timur has been fighting in the octagon since 2015, if you count The Ultimate Fighter, and his resume is full of high-profile victories. However, his brother Daniel had yet to hear Bruce Buffer say his name at the end of a fight until Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Aggression and timely takedowns to secure the unanimous victory. Now, Timur is a Swedish fighter. He got the win on home soil and then lost his shit, turning the octagon into a goddamn opera stage. He told Dan Hardy just how important this victory was for him. Keith, the victory means a lot for Daniel Timur. Does it mean anything for the featherweight division?
Nothing for the division. It means much for Timur because for the rest of his life he'll get to say he has a UFC win. Because I don't expect him to win again. He's not a good fighter. To me, he's like Sly Stone's brother. That's kind of what Daniel Timur will be if David Timur was even more famous. That said, I thought it was this is a fight I shouldn't have been on the main card.
So we're not looking at the second coming of the Pitbull brothers here, right?
No, I do not think so. I do not think this is – I do not think he – I mean, not that Patricio is Patricio, but he is definitely more of a contender. I do not see this. I see this more as a Matt Serra, Nick Serra kind of thing. I'm not I think Dan Chambers is not a good talent. I'm glad to see him win in front of his home crowd. This would be the highlight of his career. As far as Sung Bin Jo, I know the criticism about him before the fight was he was a can crusher. I think you can really say that now because he just lost to probably the lower level of a featherweight you can get in Daniel Timur. I don't know. It might have been a little bit of jitters because Timur was a lot more active, kept Joe on his back foot. Wasn't to the third round where Joe is starting to – I don't know if I'm saying his name right. When he started kind of becoming competitive, but it was too late. So that might be a sign of the jitters. But still, I don't care how bad the jitters are. You lose to Daniel Timur, that is a big warning that this guy probably wasn't just a can crusher.
Yeah, and maybe, we talk about guys retiring, and this may be an opportunity for a fighter to look and say, okay, what is really the goal in this thing? I mean, this is a pinnacle if you are Daniel Timur and you have your head screwed on straight, right? This is you won on home soil, big victory in the UFC. If you continue to fight, this will probably still be the best night that you have. So I'm not saying that means necessarily go out on this night. I mean, the guy could fight as long as he wants to fight. But sure. I think having proper perspective of this might be – and we're going to get to I got one more little piece of something for the Gustaffson retirement a little bit later. But all right, Let's move on to the prelims. Let's hit them quick. Sergey Kandashkar defeated Rostam Akman via unanimous decision. Anything here?
Yeah, I think this is probably the most entertaining fight. Really fun back and forth. And the Russian, I just think he had more power. That was the difference.
Lena Landsberg defeated Tanya Evinger via unanimous decision, 30-27, 30, and a couple of 30-26s. Let me ask you a question about this. I feel like every time we do this show, there's some pretty good female fighter matchup that's kind of buried. Do you think that someday, 5-10 years from now, people are going to look back and say, all these great fights happened and we sort of miss them? Or all these great at the very least, all these great matchups? I always feel like there's some weird buried women's MMA fight every time we talk.
Yeah, it's that, and when the flyweight division was really established, it was the same thing. It's like they don't care about rankings. Rankings really don't matter. To me, I felt like this fight definitely should have been this fight is more important to the division than Timur and Joe is. I agree. About the fight itself, what a terrible performance by Tanya Evinger. Fantastic performance by Lena Landsberg. She came into this fight as the biggest underdog on the card and then came in her hometown and won. And what it feels like to me, Tanya Evinger went from best talent outside the UFC, women talent outside the UFC, to suddenly looking very old in a very short amount of time. Because she kind of looks done. I mean, she got out wrestled by a striker, and this is an out grappled by a striker. And not even. I mean, let's be honest. Lena Landsberg is not a great talent. She's not like a contender. And Tanya Evinger, to me, I thought this was the easiest fight on the card to pick. And boy, was I wrong, because it was probably one of the most lopsided fights on the card. Lena Landsberg beat Tanya Evinger's ass.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. It's a fine line between the best talent outside the UFC and the worst talent inside the UFC. And I think that, she's approaching the latter. And it's a shame because, she's been around for a while. She's had some good nights. And I just keep getting this weird vibe about the way women's MMA is being handled. So, all right, let's move on. Leonardo Santos defeated Stevie Ray by first round knockout right hand. What do you have here?
Oh, I mean, this is great. I mean, the guy's been out for the UFC for 3 years. He's got some big wins. I mean, he's beaten Kevin Lee. He's beat Rocco Martin. Those are two guys, obviously contenders. One's a contender. Well, they're both welterweights now, but when they were in lightweight. He's a 7-time BJJ world champion. I mean, he's as good in the ground as there are in the UFC. And now he's knocking people out. I think a lot of people thought he could beat Stevie Ray. I don't think they expected it by this way. I know we want to breeze through the prelims. This is the only one I really want to talk about. Shout out to Eddie Mercado. He said it reminded him of when Travis Luda one-punch knocked out Marvin Eastman. And I was like, that is a really good comparison when you got the jiu-jitsu guy knocking people out one punches.
Yeah.
I hope that Santos stays active. I know he's up there in age, but he won't have a short window. But he's talented, so hopefully we can keep this guy fighting more often than every 3 years.
Is he one of these guys you think where he's so confident with the ground that he feels like he can stand and let him fly?
Yeah,
with wrestlers more than BJJ.
Yeah, which is always becomes a downfall. So, to me, I think it'd probably be remember when this guy landed that one punch? How surprised! I think that's probably more of what's going to happen. I just want to see him fight, man. He's a good talent. He's beating good people. Let's get him in there.
Yeah. Frank Camacho defeated and ultimately retired Nick Hine via second round TKO. What'd you have in this one?
I think Frank Camacho had a beautiful performance. Hine couldn't keep up with the pace of Frank Camacho, and Frank Camacho, when he started winning every minute, and it just started. It was like a guy running a race, and you're trying to keep up with the guy who's faster than you, and you just slowly start seeing yourself fall behind because he's faster than you, and that's what this fight went in. Every minute that went by, it became more and more dominance by Camacho. Really good performance, and Nick Hine, you already mentioned, announced his retirement. Good luck in whatever he does.
Excuse me. I like Camacho in the ring post fight. I mean, saw Dan Hardy. I like to see occasionally we get a peek into this where there's guys that really have that emotion, and it comes through. He's glad to talk to Dan Hardy. It lets you see guys being grateful that these UFC wins are not always a given, especially on the prelim card. Yeah. All right, Bia Malecki defeated Eduarda Santana via second round submission, rear naked choke. What do you got here?
Yeah, I mean, this is low-level women's talent, as you can see. I think both of them are probably regional fighters, not UFC-level talent. I did pick Babe Malecki for one reason and one reason only. They mentioned she was training with Fortis MMA, so, I get to support my boys. And that said, how about the tap by Santana? That was one of the quickest taps I've ever seen. I don't think the submission was even in, and she tapped out. So not a good look for Santana.
Side note, I feel like we've reached a point now where we've done enough shows where we can start to put together an effective Sunday morning cornerman drinking game. When Keith mentions Fortis MMA, I think you should take a shot. And we'll work all this out, but we're going to start with you mentioning Fortis MMA.
Somewhere in the middle. If you ask me a question and my answer is somewhere in the middle,
yes,
take a shot.
There you go. We're going to work this thing out. We're going to workshop this. All right. Up next, Devin Clark defeated Darko Stosic via unanimous decision, 29-28 all the way across. Which see?
So the reason why I had to pick Stosic in this matchup, I was wrong. The only reason why I'm not high in either guy, but anybody who loses to Alex Nicholson, which is Devin Clark, I'll never pick you in a fight because you lost to Alex Nicholson, for Christ's sake. So I picked Darko. The difference is Clark's gas tank was better. His output was better. He He's a guy. He has the cardio. He doesn't have the overall skill in the chin. Well, Stark seems the opposite. He has all the skill, just he has nothing for cardio. And to me, that was the difference.
So for me, here's another thing I'm going to add to the drinking game. It's something I call the Shillan double play. It's when you manage to shit on two fighters. One defined by the fighter who's so shitty that he lost to him. It's a double play. I think I may require 2 shots to be taken for that, just in honor of the name.
I am going to be at PFL this week live. Right. Alex Nicholson is fighting this week. If I come on the show next week, all beat up, Alex Nicholson finally found me.
And yeah, exactly. And then the drinking game's probably off because keeping it real just went wrong. All right, and finally, Joel Alvarez defeated Danilo Belluardo via second-round TKO at 221. What'd you see here?
I saw 2 very low-level UFC fighters. Europeans just can't wrestle. That's what I saw. I saw really sloppy, ugly wrestling. And when Bellardo goes put on his back, he looked like a fish out of water. Like he never has been on his back before. When Alvarez swept him, it was like almost like he didn't know that you can be swept to your back. It was really bad. Like he wasn't. He didn't know that was allowed in the rules.
All right, let's get on to the fun stuff. Let's do trending up, trending down. I'll take for trending up Makwan Amirkhani. I don't expect it to lead to anything, but I get excited, man. There's something about the guy. He has a charisma. There's something about him when he fights. Sure. I want to see more of him, but I don't see it going anywhere. Trending down, Jimmy Manawa. Manawa, either we really have something in Rakic or Manawa is completely washed because he got done, son, and it was quick.
4 losses in a row.
Yeah, that might be it.
Trending down, Alexander Gustafson. Losing again in his hometown. I also throw Tanya Evinger in there. I think she's lost 3 fights in a row. That's not a good look for a former champion. And my predictions is trending down. I went 4-8, and I went 1-4 in the main card. I was leading the Sherdog staff prediction. I am no longer after this terrible European performance. Rising up, Anthony Smith. Biggest fight of his career. Alexander Rakic, and I put Leonardo Santos.
All right. Let's move on to Not For Nothing. Not For Nothing, ESPN. I don't need to see Manawa kiss his daughter and wife and then get his face kicked off. I know you're into building stories, but goddamn, can we not have that moment right before? Now I'm looking at this guy in the ring. I just saw his wife and kid. So, all right. Not for nothing, but Alexander Rakic. It was a highlight reel knockout. But can we at least wait until Manawa is up on the stool before we take the victory lap and the sleepy good nights and the quiet the crowd? Yeah. Let's at least know the guy's still alive before we go into that. All right,
at least he apologized. At least he did apologize for it.
He did. You're right.
Good for him to doing that.
Anything on Not For Nothing?
Yeah, Not For Nothing. Darko Stojic. If you're going to taunt somebody and tell them to bring it, you can't not throw a punch for the next minute. Not For Nothing, UFC, why do we even have a 145 division? You did the whole show, and since the show is over, you have fighters going down. It happened again with Bay Malecki after Macy Shazon, after who was the girl he beat up? The girl she beat in the finals. All the people you sign off the 145-pound division is fighting 135. Not For Nothing. Let's have actual 145ers. Not For Nothing, Paul Felder. If you're going to tell a story about a project testing judges and how they are inside a building versus at home, please remember the results, because it was an interesting story. And then saying, I don't remember the results. Come on. And my last one, Not For Nothing, Ackman. Dude, you got to shave that chest, that back, that body. You got to do something, brother. That was terrible. If I was a fighter in his division, I wouldn't want to fight him just because that's gross.
All right, shocker of the night. My shocker of the night is Andy. No, we'll get to that in a second. Just kidding. My shocker of the night is Alexander Gustafson laying him down. I thought he was in this fight. He sort of looked like himself, but he seemed like he was ready to go. Hardy said after the fight, he seemed like he was sort of waffling on it. I just thought he was waffling on the words to say before he hung him up. The way he was taking those gloves off, he was taking them off like he never wanted to put them on again. Yeah. So that was my shocker of the night. What was yours?
Mine was Lena Landsberg just beating the piss out of Tanya Evans, and especially not just beating her, but how she beat her. She out-grappled the grappler, the wrestler. I was very surprised by that.
All right, from the notebook, I have a comparison for you here, and I want you to stick with me for a second. But I know I was critical of the Gooden, Hardy, Felder thing before, but I'm starting to like it. Here's the vibe I get, though, Keith. it's like Felder's a tourist whose family's still asleep and he wants to go hit a bar, like a pub at 10 in the morning and get something to drink. And he starts talking to Gooden and Hardy. And for 70% of the conversation, they're like low-key busting his balls. Like they're looking at each other and they're kind of giving him shit.
Yeah.
But for 30%, he kind of saying stuff that's smart enough to keep them on the hook and engaged.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's like inside jokes between the two of them, and Felder's kind of like the fish out of water tourist. That's the vibe I get, and I gotta admit, it's growing on me. Where do you stand with these guys? You're very commentary.
Yeah, I'm very pro. I actually like the team. I think Hardy and Felder, they actually seem like they're friends, and it comes out when they talk. They have like a lot of they're joking a lot. I really enjoy this three team. I think it's as good as they have. And I really would like to see the UFC start using them in teams because there's definitely a chemistry that happens with the more you instead of mix and match them all the time. Find who works with each other and use them together. I think this is a great team personally.
I think the other piece of it is that if you're not built to sort of be curious or ask questions, or like you're not a guy that would go to a party and just sort of start chatting, the chemistry comes from the fight week. So these guys being in teams means they're doing fight week stuff together. So they're sitting around.
Yeah, that's right.
Learning about it. That's where I think the chemistry comes in as much as on the mic. Secondly, let's talk Uriah Hall. What did you think of Uriah Hall doing analysis? I have always thought his problem in the cage has always been he thinks too much, and that may benefit him on the
Sure.
What do you think? Are you?
So that was like a brief moment when I didn't really pay attention. I was doing other things, so I can't really give an opinion. I didn't really pay attention enough.
What do you think? Just knowing him, do you think it'd be something he'd do well? Watching his interviews.
If you listen to him, he's a very intelligent. Like you said, he's a very intelligent person. I know he's like a little bit of an introvert. You talk about he's very, even when he wins, he's very like thoughtful in everything he says. So yeah, I actually think he might be a good avenue for him is being an analyst.
All right, for Talk That Shit, I got one thing. There was a couple things I liked tonight, but I'm going to give it one thing. It's, it's Gustaffson. It's AG.
You didn't let me give any of my good comments.
Oh,
best comedy moments. Man, dissing me.
From the Notebook. I'm being very...
All right, I'm sorry. There was a props to Dan Hardy when he mentioned taking kicks. He said, hey, taking kicks can break people's arms. Ain't that right, Paul Felder? When he asked him about that. That props to him. I don't remember if it was Hardy or Felder, but someone slipped after one of them said, yeah, he slipped on that punch. And then the guy goes, yeah, people slip when they get punched hard. I can't remember who. I think Hardy said he slipped, and then Felder jabbed him back. And yeah, people slipped. That was pretty funny. Props to Felder, who was cracking jokes about how hairy Ackman was. And John Gooden, please don't ever stop comparing anybody who has punching power to Mike Tyson's punch power. Stop doing that.
I know it's weird. It's one of those easy things that commentators, definitely go. If there's a guy that's stocky and he throws haymakers, he's Mike Tyson.
Yeah, it's definitely. Oh, Mike Tyson. Yeah.
So back on Talk That Shit, I'm going to go with Gustaffson, and we're going to keep it very simple. The show is over, guys. I mean, that's about as good of a way of a mic drop that you can retire. I actually really liked it, and then just that was it. All right, before we let you go, here's some housekeeping from UFC on ESPN Plus 11, courtesy of Mike Bond. Anthony Smith, Alexander Rakic, Makwan Amirkhani, and Leonardo Santos earned $50,000 for Fight Night bonuses. UFC on ESPN Plus 11 drew an announced attendance of 14,319 for a live gate of $2 million. The UFC promotional guidelines compliance payout for the event totaled $122,000. Debuting fighters went 2-4 at the event. Betting favorites went 7-4 on the card. One fight had even odds. Betting favorites fell to 7-10 in UFC headliners this year. And the total fight time for the 12-bout card was 2 hours and 9 minutes. Does that seem quick to you?
No, it was very quick, which is always a good thing. Quick is bad. The other thing, they announced that UFC is coming to Denmark, which was kind of cool. I think it's the first time ever in Denmark. I couldn't find Denmark on a map if you give me a chance, but I think that's cool. The more countries to go to, the better. And
I want to say Hermanson was angling for that headline.
And it's there.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you put up Hermanson versus someone in a matchup that makes sense. Maybe I'm drawing blank. I wasn't prepared for it. But, a top middleweight, sure. That'd be a Hermanson Gastelum main event that card.
That'd be a good one. Yeah. All right, so now let's move on to Before We Let You Go, where we run around MMA and kind of talk about some stuff that's outside of the UFC or some other things in combat sports. So I had these in a different order. I'm going to switch them up real quick because I want to end on the PFL because you're going to be there. Let's start with Brendan Schaub's stand-up. Couple questions. Have you watched it? Did you like it? And are you aware that you can get 50% off your CBD order if you positively review it? Did you know that, Keith?
I did not know that. I'm not a CBD. I don't know anything about CBD. I don't do any of that stuff.
He has a sponsorship or he has some ownership, and they've sent out an email that if you review it in the way that it should be reviewed, you get 50% off.
So you say something. You give him 5 stars. No, I know he does stand-up. I've never seen it. I know stand-up extremely hard. I would probably be an easy judge for him. I don't listen to his show. I don't listen to Rogan's show. I watch highlights of things that interest me for the most part. I don't really listen to it. So yeah, I did not know. I can't really give a lot. I know Brendan Schaub is not very popular because he had something to do with the MMA, the Reddit streams going.
Yeah, he went on. Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, it's as much as I'm not saying I haven't done it, but it is stealing. I mean, let's be honest. If we want to be honest, if you watch a stream, you are stealing from the UFC.
Right.
And don't go on your big rant about how fighters are underpaid and then steal from the company.
That's
like
true.
You can't have it both ways.
So, but just to tell you this, one thing that you have to check out if you haven't seen it yet, the best meme I've seen yet is it said, "Better stand up," and it was a picture of Schaub standing up as a fighter and then holding the mic. And I was like, that was pretty funny. All right, let's talk about Yoel Romero's payday.
Worst stand up, yeah.
Right. Yoel Romero's payday. Keith, Yoel Romero sued the supplement company that had the contaminated supplement that made his blood and urine unclean. Keith, give me your take on this, and I challenge you to do it without saying that Romero will never see the money. Can you do that? Because everybody seems to be saying they'll never see the money.
I think a lot. I mean, this because these companies, they kind of like fold. That's what they do. They push out supplements. They do it illegally. Then they fold the company and open a new one because they get all these great results because of the illegal stuff. When they find out what it is, then they fold. I hope he gets the money. If he does, and I hope he does, what an opening gate for rest of the fighters. Guys like Justin Ledette, guys like Tom Lawler, people who have been busted on contaminated substances. Junior Dos Santos, this is huge. Besides getting paid, this is a huge moment for all the other fighters that have been suspended because of contaminated substance. And if you are one of those fighters, go hit up the Cowell brothers because they want a huge. We'll hit those guys up. Yeah, pay those guys because they're gonna get you paid.
All right, Keith, Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz. The overweight lover was definitely in the building as Andy the Destroyer took AJ out and not to the ball game. Keith, your thoughts?
I'm not a boxing guy, but I did watch it. I'm gonna root for a guy with C cups. I mean, I enjoy C cups, so good for Anthony Ruiz.
Doesn't matter who has
the ultimate. Yeah, ultimate dad bod. Good for him. Great moment. That said, I became a Joshua fan by the way he handled the loss. He was very complimentary. At one point, he actually turned the commentator away and said, "No, focus on him. It's his moment." What a way to lose. We've seen terrible. I mean, the only other person I remember losing disgracefully was probably Chris Cyborg after the Amanda Nunes fight. She was amazing and the way she lost. And a nice job by Joshua. I think he gained a lot of fans by that.
I hope so. To me, it kind of reeks a little bit of Rory McDonald, a little bit of Anderson Silva before the Weidman fight. Anderson almost felt like the belt was a burden. You know, all this stuff of like Joshua letting him pose with his belts. It just sat weird with me. I think it's a great story. I have definitely argued with most of the people online. I said, the thing I said on Twitter was, you didn't lose a star last night, you gained one. Anthony Joshua was already a star. Now Andy Ruiz is a star. Andy Ruiz can book with Fury and Wilder at least one fight with them. So I think that more was gained by boxing last night than lost.
I don't think we'd be talking about this fight if Joshua knocked him out in the second round like most people thought.
100%. All right, let's talk PFL. Give me your thoughts so far on the PFL and what you're looking forward to this week.
I love the PFL. There's definitely some things I dislike about it. One is I hate the same night quarters and semis. I think that really messes things up. I hate the tiebreaker it's only a 2-round fight in the first round. So they make mistakes. But that said, they're bringing in more and more talent. It's getting better. It's a fun concept. I enjoy the concept. I enjoy getting guys. That's because you lose one fight, you're not out of it. You can still get a finish. That said, I think it might be a little, and this is gonna be crazy for me to say because you know how much I'm like leading the parade when it comes to Russians. I think it might be too saturated with Russians. Like the light heavyweight division, there's half the division is Russians. I think you might be oversaturating the division. But that said, come on, if I can watch fights on Thursday and be top quality, good quality fights, sign me up, man. But hold on, can I say another idea? They have 6 weight classes. What I think they should do, instead of having every 2 weeks, have one weight class 6 weeks in a row, because they kind of lose momentum when the event ends. Instead of saying, "Hey, see you next Thursday," it's like, "See you 2 Thursdays from now." They kind of, are you going to remember to turn back in, especially if you're a casual fan? I say do one weight class. You can fill the card. I mean, because you have to fill the arena. You can put some alternates, have alternates in it, so they're fighting each other. I mean, put on just you can do local guys filling out the undercard, so people fill the arena. But have the weight classes. Don't do 2 weight classes. Do a 1 weight class a night.
Yeah, I think I like the alternates fighting too, because if you got to put packages together about promoting the fights, at least you got some highlights of these guys fighting in the prelims of a different card or whatever. You have some PFL footage of these guys. Yeah,
and also like we just happened where guys missed weight. There was no one filling. One guy got a forfeit of this. You'd have alternates who's weighing in, and they know, hey, your first one, you have a number. Your first alternate, your second alternate, your third alternate. Hey, guys out, first alternate, you're in. Okay, the other guy's out, second alternate, you're in. So you wouldn't lose fights.
Yeah, and what you could do with them is, I've been to some, I don't know if it was Combate Americas or World Series of Fighting, where they had like post limbs. So the main event happened, and they have fights after. So have those guys fight then, because one, it gives an interesting backdrop for guys who are doing post-fight shows. Like I did a post-fight show at one place, and there was guys fighting behind me, and I thought it was pretty cool to have that as the backdrop. Yeah. So it continues to promote, company.
Bellator does that too. Yeah. Bellator does the post-limbs too.
All right, let's do a quick finish strong. I just wanted to say this: if you feel like someone leaves too early, it's probably the right time. For BJ Penn, Dan Henderson, Vitor Belfort, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, all these guys that we think are past their primes and just showing up for a check. Here's Alexander Gustaffson, who says one fight after a title fight with the best fighter of all time, hey guys, I might not have it anymore. I won't be in the camp that says he'll be back. I'll simply say I hope he enjoys retirement, finds the next thing that he wants to dedicate his time to. And if the UFC can lure him back for a big payday like they did GSP, so be it. But maybe this guy is leaving at the right time. We criticize everybody else for leaving too late. Maybe he's leaving at the right time. Let him go. Congratulate him on a great career, and don't say, why, you got so much fight left in you. He's ready to go. Let him go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's better to leave early than leave too late. My big finish is also going to focus on Alexander Gustaffson, but I'm going to focus on the fans' reaction. Can we not go overreact when everything is said? When a fighter retires, can we not overreact to how great his career is? I saw many people calling Alexander Gustaffson the best fighter to not win a major MMA title. I mean, Kazushi Sakuraba never won a major MMA title. Are we going to say Alexander Gustafsson had a better career than the Kazushi Sakuraba? How about Donald Cerrone? Donald Cerrone has most wins in UFC history. Technically speaking, Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock never won a major title. Once we started counting titles, Yoel Romero has a better resume than Alexander Gustafsson. I mean, at the end of the day, Alexander Gustafsson beat Jan Blachowicz. He beat a aging Glover Teixeira. He beat aging Mauricio Shogun Rua. He had a great career. I'm not trying to shit on the guy, but his career is going to be summed up that he had a close match with John Jones. He had a close match to Daniel Cormier. That's the highlight of his career, was having a close match.
Right, 100%. I think that's really a mistake that fans make. I mean, listen, Gray Mandarin almost won the belt too. That doesn't mean that he had a great career. That's right, 100%. How close you get to the belt. It's like you said, what kind of career did you put together? So one change this week, obviously, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. We can be heard on the Cageside Press Podcast Network, which may change in the coming weeks. We can be followed at Cageside Pods. Keith, tell people where they can read you and follow your stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. It's Keith Shillan, MMA. My name is spelled KeithShillanMMA. And you can read all my stuff on Sherdog, Cageside Press, and Fansided. And also, besides this podcast network, I'm also the executive producer of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, where I am part of 3 different shows over there. So check that out.
So, guys, normally I make a big fuss when we get out of here. I tell you to tell everybody that you know about the Sunday Morning Cornerman, which I think that you should do. But in honor of the great Alexander Gustaffson, I will be ending Sunday Morning Cornerman a different way this week, and I will simply be saying the show is over, guys.